Bismillah ar Rahim. We're back with another In Context. Today is August 24th. Salam Shabab. The US and European leaders just met in the United States, and we need to discuss some of the talking points that came out of that. One of the biggest tells that came out of this event or this meeting was how the US is now handling the Ukraine war. And to me, they're changing the world dynamic by their new approach. Do you agree or disagree?
I've been reading that some people think that this was a victory for Putin. Some people think this was actually not good for Putin. I don't really know what to believe. I think what I saw at least, was a very dejected looking Trump staff at all. And it seemed like Putin was his usual sort of chipper self. And I just got a vibe out of that meeting that it didn't go the way they wanted it to. And I think that became more apparent in the hours and days to follow, as it's clear at this point nothing has come of that. There is no intention on the part of the Russians to meet with Zelensky. Trump's trilateral meeting seems to be a total fantasy that only exists in his head at this point. And again, Trump seems to be unwilling to lay down the law on Putin and has pushed off sanctions and other penalties for another 2 weeks at least. And I just think at this point, Trump really doesn't know what to do. And I think that I think Russia does know what it wants to do. I think Russia thinks that it can outlast them in a war of attrition. I think Putin has shown there's no amount of bodies he's not willing to sacrifice. You know, reports have come in that massive amounts of Russian troops have died in this war. And I don't see any reason to think he's going to look himself in the mirror and say, you know what, we better stop now. I think he thinks victory is near. You know, evidence shows that they have had some success in recent times. I don't know how close victory actually is, but I think this just sort of didn't work out for Trump. And I think that I really can't predict what's going to happen because Trump waffles so frequently when it comes to Russia. I think with Iran, it's easier to sort of figure out what he actually wants to do. And I do think there's conflict on the horizon there again soon, too. Even sort of hinted at that in one of his interviews. But when it comes to Russia, I mean, it really is a day-by-day thing. But my personal sentiment is I think that this Ukraine war is not ending anytime soon. And I think that it's probably just going to end up getting worse. That's my take.
Okay. I'd like to zoom out of the details of negotiating quote-unquote peace in Ukraine to look at the international order and what's happening to it. Trump's showmanship doesn't work well for the emperor of the evil empire and or the so-called leader of the free world, whichever way you want to call him. But that aside, there are strategic ramifications for what he's saying and doing. I think that he and his administration are consciously, not subconsciously, changing the international order in meaningful ways. So first, on Russia, Trump is repositioning the US from the head of the Western alliance that is in conflict with Russia and Ukraine to a referee between two regional enemies, the Western Europe or the European Union and Russia. So now he wants, and he has forced Europe to buy weapons for Ukraine. The US doesn't supply Ukraine with weapons anymore. It supplies Europe with weapons that are meant for Ukraine. And that is classical old-style 19th century containment policy. That's what Britain has been doing for all of 19th century in Europe. This is a known game. The Europeans know it. The Russians know it. I don't think it can run very long, and I don't think it will be very successful. But that looks like the policy. The important thing in my mind is not just what it means for the European continent and the relationship between Europe and Russia, but what it means for the international order. The international order until now has been a colonial empire that is run by a Western alliance. And Trump is fracturing the Western alliance and moving from the position of being the head of the Western alliance to trying to dominate alone on his own, rather than as a part of an alliance. He may think that he is too smart by half and that he can have his cake and eat it too. so he can depend on Europe to stand behind him and assert the unity of the Western Alliance in front of the colonies, while at the same time sitting them down the street to Russia and whoever else. I don't think that will work long term, but it will work short term because right now Europe has no alternatives. So it will work short term, but not long term. What he is doing also with the tariff fiasco is fracturing the economic side of the international order the US built after World War II. And the fact that he is launching war through it on Europe, just like everybody else, is another crack in the Western Alliance. So I think what we're seeing is the fracturing of the post-World War II order in the sense that the colonial Western Alliance is breaking up. Trump may not think so. I think so, and I seriously hope so for the sake of humanity. Back to you, Joseph.
May I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Quick, I just want to restate what you just said so I can understand it a little deeper. What you're really saying to me is the United States realizes there's a chance here to not only weaken Russia through Ukraine, but you weaken Europe too. And even though they've held a relationship where the United States takes the bulk of the prize, and as you said in previous podcasts, gives Europe the scraps, and Europe was okay with that and everything. With that's to me the Western Alliance. But now we don't want to even give you guys the scraps. We want to weaken you to even more. We're going to weaken Europe and Russia through this Ukraine war and give you less than scraps now.
That's pretty much what I was saying, but I'll just add that this also reflects the fact that in comparative power, Europe is growing stronger. So as of late, one thing you would hear your American officials objecting strongly to is the fact that the European Union now is regulating international economy, and it has been doing that for the last 10 years. So that is part of power. It's not necessarily all military power. Joseph.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Trump is a unilateralist and has very little interest in any meaningful, long-lasting alliances or engagements. But I don't know. I mean, I think this could end up being a more violent period we're entering into. I think the fracturing of this alliance doesn't necessarily mean a more peaceful alliance. It probably means the United States is going to be more rogue and more aggressive when it chooses to be. And I think this does not bode well for the Middle East. And I don't think this bodes well for Palestine at all. And I don't think this bodes well for the Muslim world in general. Not to say that Europe was a good tempering mechanism on the United States, because obviously the United States still acted unilaterally repeatedly in the last 25 years. As we all know, with the wars it's initiated. But I feel like we're entering a period now where Trump can wake up one morning and say, you know what? I feel like bombing Iran again. And then 24 hours later, that's going to happen. And I believe that that's where we're headed. And I think that that's not a more stable or better international order. I think that's very scary, to be honest. I think the United States really, even with Gaza, doesn't really know what to do, vacillating on positions almost once a week, from wanting to end the war to almost having an agreement to now Trump saying just let Israel finish them all off. Like, I don't see this kind of development as positive. And I think that maybe in the long run it's going to be better. I don't know. We'll see. But I think we're going to see more violence and just brutality in the short to medium term due to the fact that, the United States is basically being run by, in my opinion, a madman who doesn't really have a serious long-term vision beyond just like raw power and his own glory. I really believe you can disagree with me on this, but I really think that this Nobel Prize thing is like Trump's main priority right now. And I really think that that's the only reason he really even cares about ending this Ukraine thing. I really don't think he could care less. I think he wants to win.
He's counting the wars. He's counting the wars he's fictitiously ending.
There really is something in his head that thinks, I guess, if he wins a Nobel Prize, he's achieved the highest honor a human could. I don't know. But it seems like that's something that's really at the forefront of his mind. And I feel like all of his geopolitical machinations in this current moment are aimed at finding a way for him to win it, which is absolutely terrifying and crazy. But that's where we're at. So that's sort of how I see things.
So what you're saying, and it's really laughable when it's so ridiculous and transparent. He's obvious about it. that I want Nobel Prize too. Obama had it. Why don't I have it? It's really childish. But that aside, um, these childish acts are within an established canvas. So there is an established general idea within his administration what they are trying to do, and he is playing within that to satisfy his whims and wishes. I'm not debating that, but there is an overall overriding policy, and even lacking that, what he does, being the head of the evil empire, changes the order, whether he likes it or not. The fact that he is back a second time means that this is here to stay. It's not an aberration. That's why he is being dealt with at a much more serious and much quieter level now than the previous time. Previous time there was objections because there was thought that, well, this is an aberration and we can object to it and it can contain its damage by loudly objecting to it. But now people are not objecting loudly. I mean, Western Alliance is not objecting loudly because they figure, well, this is here to stay with much better absorb things and work to find a way out of it from underneath it.
All right, so my
So,
question for you then is what is this goal? Because I don't see it. I don't see a real long-term U.S. vision. Like, what is it?
so right now, the U.S. declares that its fundamental enemy is China. But I think there is also another enemy that they don't declare, EU. They want to contain EU, and they are serious about that. The EU has been getting much stronger in the last 10 years. So when for example, in their talk about tariffs, one of the things they keep saying and people don't pay close attention to is the EU is not allowed to regulate digital industry because the EU has been effectively regulating digital industry while the US was not, and has managed to impose things on their companies that the US does not like. And the EU is expanding to other areas of economic activity. And power, as you know, is not just political and military, it's also economic. So the US is quite alarmed at this. The fact that Britain has come out of the EU means the EU is much more effective now than it used to be. Britain was
That's true.
was a fifth column for the US inside the alliance, making sure it doesn't get anywhere. As soon as it moved out, it was obvious that the US didn't like it because it means the EU now can do stuff. So there is this unwritten second concern that they are working to contain and constrain. And they are underestimating the EU. The EU is timid, is slow, but it plans and gets where it wants to get slowly. Back to you, Joseph.
Yeah, but I still don't. Okay, they want to. They're concerned about the EU and their expanding economic influence and power and trade regulation and digital, governance or whatever, or digital the tax. I followed that a little bit, the digital uses tax, but like, but that's not long-term vision. What is the goal? Like, you could say that the earlier vision was spreading liberalism and democracy, or at least that was what they said they wanted to do. Like, they don't even like, what are they even trying to do? I don't. Is it sort of like create like sort of rump states that are loyal to like the Trump empire? I don't understand. Like, they're trying to basically turn the EU. Is their goal to turn everyone into like a UAE kind of sort of vassal state that sort of operates within the sphere of influence of American Zionist interest? I don't really.
That's a good point. I think the point is the US is explicitly and unquestionably above everybody else. Nobody dares to challenge US dominance in any sphere, and everybody is fighting each other and running to the US to free the fight. That means a lot of chaos, but to the prisoners like us, the collapse of the jail walls is chaos, but it's quite welcome chaos. These are the jail walls coming down.
I don't disagree with that. I think that ultimately I think this ultimately will work out one way or another. It's breaking the stranglehold of the hegemony. We talked about this in the last 5 different interviews we've done. Right, the order is collapsing in the vacuum of space that is opening right now. The change will happen, but I just don't see, at least from our perspective, I haven't seen any real like
don't see positive change.
Yeah, I don't see anything from an Islamicate or Umatic or whatever you want to call it perspective to be positive about. Even Syria right now looks like it's about to collapse, and I'm seeing like very little hope right now. I mean, I know hope, we always must maintain our faith that things will get better. Right? It's part of the deen, but as things stand right now, we're pretty deep in the wilderness here, and the light is not shining very clearly at the end of the tunnel. I
That's
think
true.
it's. I mean, do you see anything to be optimistic about? Because for me personally, I was sort of optimistic about the Syria thing up to about 2 months ago, but right now it seems like even Israel is even destroying that. And
Okay. Uh, A, the fact that there is disturbance in the international order opens opportunities. Now, whether these opportunities turn to anything positive or not, it's up to us. But it means that there are opportunities where there was none. Like what's happening in Syria is an opportunity that would never have happened while the international order was dominant and in charge, and things were humming nicely. I remain quite optimistic on what's happening in Syria, meaning all the stuff you have seen in the last 2 months were a long time coming, and they would not have been able to evade them. The fact that it's still standing and still fighting is quite good, and the longer it is, the more hopeful I am.
I don't know. I just see like you know, both the Kurdish separatists and in the south with the Druze, they seem more intent than ever on sort of breaking that country up. And I I don't know. I think that the
Yes, but
conflict is on the horizon there,
look,
and
it's a
I think
hopeless
it's
project. It's a hopeless
at some
project.
point. Look, at some point, Syrian central government's going to have to fight the SDF. That's coming. You know
It,
that's
it,
coming at some point.
yes, it looks like that.
It's going to have. It's one is going to have to go. Like I don't see that coexistence working. And can they take them out? Will they be able to? Will the Americans let them? I mean, probably not. This is the thing, and like, I just feel like this zone is gonna this Kurdish thing. These SDF people they're not going to play nice, no matter what concessions are offered by the government. That's just a feeling I get, especially when I talk to some of these people. They want nothing short of their own state, and they want nothing to do with this government. And I don't see any flexibility on no matter what. Let them have their language in schools. Let them, don't enforce Islamic Sharia anywhere in those. I mean, whatever they offer, I don't think they're gonna bite for other than complete and total autonomy. But maybe I'm misreading it. I don't know.
The Ujlan cult is a nefarious force.
Yeah, I think they're unbelievably nefarious, and that's my whole point. I don't think there's any reconciling with them.
But it's on its own. It's not that strong. The reason it continues to exist is because U.S. enforces a protectorate to the east of Euphrates, and that is official. It's not secret. Nothing can pass the Euphrates. Nothing military can pass the Euphrates. And if it ever shows up, U.S. airplanes show up and start strafing Euphrates. This has been going on for the last 8 months. Even when the Ujlan cultists make fake events, the U.S. planes show up dutifully and start strafing the Euphrates. So the only reason this thing exists is because the U.S. Continues to support it. The U.S. claims it wants to dismantle this, but they are not serious about it. On the other hand, Turkey is serious about it. The U.S. is not in a very good position to keep fighting this war. Hopefully it will come to head, but it's not obvious. Yes, agreed. And this is the real show. The stuff in Suwaida in the south is complete nonsense.
I agree. This is my yes. I feel like the real show is this in the Northeast. This is the real fight.
Yeah,
I think the stuff is a distraction.
The nonsense in the south. It's a small gang in the desert. These guys are saying, "Well, we can't eat or drink. Come occupy us." Really? And you want to make a state in a place that can't eat or drink on its own? Get alive, guys. It's a really sick joke. But the real show is the Ujlan cult.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it is wrong to deal with the Ujlan cult as a nationalist force. The Ujlan cult is beyond a nationalist force. It's a cult.
It's a cult. Oh, I agree totally. There's nothing we just. I think we are 100% agreed about what they are.
Climate green.
Borderline totalitarian, if not totalitarian cult. That's what I see.
It's straight up totalitarian. Just listen to their media. Stalinist.
They can dance their military women around and say, "Look how liberated we are," but we all know deep down that this is an absolute. It's like the Kurdish version of the MEK. You know that cult.
Exactly. Exactly. Now let's explain to people what we're talking about. We're talking about Mujahideen, the Iranian cult created by Masoud Rajavi, and they are very similar in characteristics of communist backgrounds that turn to a cult to a human being. Really weird thing.
But I think PKK is a little bit clever in their branding, whereas the MEK is just like off the wall crazy. They don't even try to hide it. Like I think that the Ajalan people are a little bit more creative in the language they use to make themselves.
No, Western propaganda is better for PKK.
Yeah,
No.
that you can say that.
Watch their media as they launch spontaneous demonstrations with Ujlan pictures.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Spontaneous, Stalin style spontaneous demonstrations.
Yeah.
With Ujlan's pictures. For people who don't know who is that guy.
I've seen it. No, it's crazy. It's really cool.
Anyway, so that aside, just as a last point, I want to point out that one aspect of this fracture of the Western alliance is the European stance vis-a-vis Gaza. It is, it is significant, but not very serious. Significant in the sense that Europe is objecting to two things. First, Israel's attempt to arrogate Gaza because they find this parallel in this to Ukraine and the inviolability of borders, while the US finds that borders are not inviolable. And that scares the daylights out of Europe.
Yeah.
And the second one, I think Europe is seeing an opening on the international stage to act as a mediator in the Middle East. For a long time, the US has blocked that role and claimed that it is the mediator accepted by everybody because it is the only one who is trusted by everybody around. Right now, the US is openly on Israel's side with the GHF running its human traps in Gaza, and the US supporting the annihilation of Gaza. So the Europe now has discovered that two-state solution is important and fundamental, and it's going to be the champion of this. What Europe is doing is trying to play an independent international role. They may not want a two-state solution. I think it has always been fiction, but it's a good tool for them to play an international role. This is a position on the international stage that has been vacated by the US, and Europe is trying to move to fill it. Whether they succeed or not is not really the point. The point is they are seeing an opportunity and trying to act on it.
Yeah, I fully agree with this concern. This is a really good point you brought up about the inviolability of borders that Trump doesn't seem to take very seriously. And obviously the Europeans do, because they have seen their border shift repeatedly in the last 75 to 100 years, have they not? And I think that they understand fully how dislocating, to use our social sciences language, this phenomenon is, whereas the United States hasn't really seen a border shift in, well, I don't know, since the War of 1812, right? Like, I mean, or maybe Mexican-American War was a little, I mean, seriously, like, the United States' borders have been pretty solidly set and are pretty safe. And I think that's sort of one of the reasons why Trump has absolutely no concern about, just give him a few hundred kilometers of land and it'll be fine. And the Europeans know that that's really, especially since Europe's obviously a lot smaller and land is all the more precious. You know, they see how serious it is. And this is an interesting point that, like, you know, the inviolability of borders, you know, this is why we have seen more European rhetoric, at least, in favor of two-state solution, whether they mean it or not. At least they're talking it, because the United States has completely stopped even remote. I mean, you know, like languages coming out of, you know, that they're starting to really embrace Israeli language for West Bank and Gaza, Judea and Samar, whatever. It's pretty scary stuff. And, you know, at least Europe seems to at least, I don't know, use better rhetoric than the United States at this point.
I don't think there's a disagreement in the Western Alliance on the inevitability of Israel absorbing the West Bank and Gaza. Their only point is to make sure that Israel does it slowly so that it can digest the pieces it absorbs slowly without creating a crisis in the Middle East. This has been the long-term plan, I think, all along. There is no problem with Israel absorbing Gaza and West Bank as long as it does it slowly without causing an international crisis. However, to do it explicitly and to violate borders, that is not acceptable to Europe. The US might not mind it right now, but it's not acceptable to Europe at least. It also opens the door, as I'm saying, for them to play the role of the savior. That doesn't mean they are going to do anything drastic. or that will cost them something real. Because although they would like to play this role, it is not a top priority. But that doesn't mean that these political positions are meaningless or that they are cost-free. Nothing's cost-free. So this is something that we need to keep in mind and keep watching. Dismissing it,
What do you think? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just had
no,
another
go ahead,
question.
go ahead. Dismissing
So
it
what
as
do you
nothing is wrong. Go ahead.
what do you think about Israel's more recent rhetoric, which seems to indicate an interest in going even beyond the borders of the West Bank and in the Jordan itself? Like, is this a legit threat? Or is this just total hot air? Or are they basically laying the groundwork for potentially even taking land on the other side of the West Bank?
One reason the US has not allowed Israel to expel the people of Gaza is if the US allows Israel to expel the people of Gaza today, tomorrow they expel all of West Bank. Because aside from all the nonsense that Trump says about the Gaza being the Rivera and whatever, West Bank to the Israelis look like much more appealing real estate. This is prime real estate. Gaza is just poor desert where they had locked all the population they evicted from Palestine into. It's a concentration camp. It was a large concentration camp. Now it's a small concentration camp, but still a concentration camp in both cases. But the West Bank is real desirable land with water and plants and plantations, and it's prime real estate to them. So that's the real price. Now, the problem they were not allowed to evict Gaza. I don't see them being allowed to evict West Bank. They would love to, and they are laying plans for this. And if they see half a chance, they will do it. But they were not allowed in Gaza, and I don't think they will be allowed in the West Bank. If they are allowed to do that in the West Bank, it would most probably lead to the collapse of the Jordanian regime. The collapse of the Jordanian regime is harmful to Israel because that has always been their protection zone. It's harmful to the US because that's the base from which they colonize Iraq. So I don't see it happening, although they would love it.
What about the other Arab states, specifically the Gulf states? Is there any point when they're going to really actually tighten the screws on Israel, or is there no limit at this point and they're just total vassals?
2 days ago, the UAE sent a military supply aeroplane from the UAE to Ramat Gan. That's a military air base in southern Israel through the Saudi airspace. The plane flight line was very interesting. It avoided Jordan and Egypt. So it looked really on the map very weird. It went in and out through the Aqaba Gulf, which is really strange. So no, these guys are the Arab Zionists, at least the UAE Saudi Arabia wing is in Israel's line. The UAE is openly saying that they are willing to support Israel's reduced concentration camp in Gaza, finance it. And although in this particular case, Jordan and Egypt didn't participate, they are participating in justifying the killing of Gaza through starvation by sending the airdrop bombing people with boxes, both Jordan and Egypt. The actual American plan for Gaza, which is we're going to send the Arab armies to subdue Gaza after Israel withdraw and protect it, is supported by the Arab Zionists, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt. So these guys, I think, with the exception of the UAE, the Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt have started to see an Israeli threat because Israel is talking about taking over some land on their side of the border as protection from an October 7 event again. That's an excuse, but that's what they're saying. However, they think of Israel as a lesser threat than their people because they think that Israel in the end want to take some of their land, but the people want to take their own heads. And they think that Israel is a threat tomorrow, but their people is a threat today. So the Arab Zionist alliance is an alliance against the people, and as a result, is still here to stay. There might be some distrust among them, but it's normal for thieves to have distrust among them.
I think we got it.
Yeah.
As depressing as what you said sounds, I think we got it.
Well, actually, there is change in the way the world is ticking. So now the old stupid slogans about the Palestinian cause as whatever is nonsense. What we see is we are all under occupation. We have one occupier. The Western Arab Zionist Alliance is in charge of the region, whether on the western border in Palestine or on the eastern border. It's one alliance, and it wants to subjugate us all, and it wants to dispossess us all. In the last, I used to say that as theory in the last 30 years. It's not theory anymore.
All right. Well, and on that note, that's perfect. Thank you, Shabab.
All right, thank you.